Hi guys, welcome back to Eileen Chevalier's Typewriter Alphabet Flashcards. Today in Botany we are going to study the Angiospermae, Basal, and Clades. In this lesson we're going to look at the classifications of the Angiospermae Division. In addition to the Basal Angiosperms, there are three clades: Magnoliidae, Monocotyledoneae, and Eudicotyledoneae. So it's a little tricky, but we're going to go over it and try to understand where the classification system has come from, where it's going, how this might change. So today you're just going to need your journal and your Typewriter Alphabet flashcards and your lovely natural history book. For your cards, you're going to use L, M, and N. So Lily of the Valley, Magnolia, and Nasturtium. I would say three of my favorite, but they're all my favorites. I remember seeing pictures of Lily of the Valley in catalogs, like seed catalogs and plant catalogs, and I just thought, I would never want to have Lily of the Valley. And then I moved to a house that had Lily of the Valley, and they are so phenomenal. They are really cool, the way they come up, the way they bloom, and the berries on them are just gorgeous. Poisonous, but really pretty. So, these are the cards we're going to use. And as you might guess, these represent the three clades. So, the first thing we're going to do is define, because we don't really know what clade means, especially since if you remember the classification system, kingdom, phylum, all of that, clade is not one of the words. So what does that even mean? So get out your journal and write the definition down with me. Clade means a branch in the tree of life. In evolutionary terms, all members of a clade are descended from a common ancestor. So if you think about a branch, I don't have any branches with me. Oh, well, here we go. So like this branch of this jade right here. So this branch right here, everything that's coming off of this branch, all of these little side branches are all from this one over here. But this branch over here is completely separate. So everything that's coming off of it they're all related, right? So if you follow this, if you're looking at this leaf right here and you follow it all the way back, it goes down to this central branch over here. And if you look at this leaf, it goes back and it goes onto a different branch, right? So they are all part of the same plant, but they're in different branches, and everything within those branches is related to one another more than it's related to the things on the other branches. So in evolutionary terms, they need to be evolved from those things, which I think is one of the reasons why the classification system is changing. Because if you say that this plant had to evolve from another plant, and then you realize that genetically, once you start looking at the genetics of it, that wouldn't have happened, or you find genetic similarities between plants that are on like two totally different branches, then you have to reconcile that, right? So in that way, these systems, as we understand plants more, may continue to change. I mean, I think that Magnoliidae is the most problematic clade, and as we study Magnoliidae, you'll begin to understand that a little bit more. But clade is just branch, and it can happen anywhere in the classification system theoretically, but it generally, for these three, it happens right under Angiospermae. So you have the kingdom is Plantae, and then the phylum, called division in plants, is the Angiospermae, and then we go with the clades, right? So that's where it would be in the classification system. So let's get to our questions and investigate section. The first one is, angiosperms were once classified as either dicot or monocot. If you remember back from What is Botany lesson, the second guy who was classifying things before Linnaeus, he divided everything into monocots and dicots. So now there are four groups: Basal Angiospermae, Magnoliids, Monocots, and Eudicots. So does this division make sense? Why might Angiospermae be divided into even more groups? Or why might some of those groups not really be completely accurate? So Angiospermae are really interesting. So let's look at this book so we can learn a little bit more. And if you have this book, which I really, really hope that you do, take the time to read all the sections, and then it will explain a lot more to you about how these plants work. Flowering plants starts on page 122, and hopefully you recognize this big gorgeous flower right here. This is our Lenten rose, aka hellebore. So the division is Angiospermae, and there are 3 clades, according to the page on 122. However, the first thing on the next page we get to is not a clade at all. These are the Basal Angiosperms. So there is a group of them. So then we skip down to orders, and there are 5 orders within the Basal Angiosperms. And this is also Basal Angiosperm. We get a lot of water plants. Then the next group that they list are the Magnoliids. And surprise, surprise, there are magnolias in there. Then we get to the monocots. And then after a bunch of pages, we get to the Eudicots. So that's how it's arranged in this book. So really, these are just, it'd be great if you can talk about these things in a group. Like, why are these, does it make sense to you? Like, obviously it makes sense right now to a lot of people because this is how these things are getting classified. Before, it made sense to do monocots and dicots. So how does this make more sense to make these more distinct divisions? All right. Clade, this is your second question, comes from the Greek word klados, meaning branch. Clades can occur at any level of the taxonomic rank and are not part of the original taxonomic system. However, the term clade is often used instead of class. So you may have learned kingdom, phylum, class, and here you'll see kingdom, phylum, clade. Actually, that's not what you'll see. In botany, you'll see kingdom, division, clade. A lot of botanists, the people who are working with plants, aren't the people who are working with animals. Everybody gets in their own little world and start making up their own words and using their own things. So you just get kind of specific depending on what your area of expertise is. So this is how it is in botany. The term clade is often used instead of class, and why is that? You can come up with your own conclusions. Think about that, and think about that especially in the next 3 lessons when we go over the 3 clades. So let's look really quickly. I want to look back at the basal angiosperms, because under division, it's the division is Angiospermae, same thing as phylum, and then it says groups is the basal angiosperms, and the orders under that is 5. So outwardly basal or primitive, that's what basal means. Angiosperms have little in common. They grow in widely scattered parts of the world. They include trees, shrubs, climbers, as well as submerged and emergent water plants. They have some have large eye-catching flowers, while in others, the flowers are small or insignificant. Most are pollinated by insects, although hornworms bloom underwater and produce drifting pollen grains. So there are different ways that they reproduce. There are all of these differences, and yet these aren't in a clade. So they're not in a branch. They're very diverse. And so why would they not be put into a clade? So think about that. And then as we study the other ones, think about why they might be put into a clade, or why that clade might not work very well. All right. Sort the flashcards. So this is an interesting exercise. There are no basal angiospermae in the flashcards, sadly. When I made them, I had no idea I was making a curriculum for this, so I was just drawing plants that were mainly in my yard or that I really loved. So I didn't include any of these. I really do. Water lily are gorgeous, but I just didn't happen to include any of them. And the other ones might have been a lot more difficult for me to find because they're kind of exotic. So no basal angiosperms. So you can only sort them into the 3 clades, which are Eudicots, Monocots, and Magnoliidae. And really, really fascinating to me. So I will sort these for you and you can sort them along with me. And then we'll see if percentage-wise these turn out to be about the same as it is in the wider world. All right, guys, time for your journal activities. So get out your journal, and there are 3 activities that we have listed for today. Compare the plant parts of the 3 clades. How are the roots, stems, leaves, and flowers different? Draw examples of each and take notes to compare. So that activity, it's kind of, you can do it now as like a precursor to the next 3 lessons where we go into depth on each one, or you could just skip that one for now or start it, and then as we go through the 3 lessons, you might learn things that you want to come back to that page and add. So if you just want to like start setting up a page where you outline and do a comparison chart, and then you can fill it in as we go, that's totally fine too. The next one is collect examples of each group. Basal Angiosperms, Magnoliidae, Monocots, and Eudicots. Try drawing, taking pictures, doing a rubbing, that's always super fun, or pressing them, also really fun. Label with the group, like, which are they part of a clade? Are they basal angiosperm? And where you found the plant. It's always good to record things, right? So document. Whenever you write or draw something, every time you get out your journal, just put your date and put your name. And if you find a plant, if you're like on a nature walk, just write the name of the park, or at least write the name of the city. And then you can also include the scientific and common names for the plant if you know them. And you could compare those again, like we did before with the scientific and common names. All right, last activity is which group of plants do we eat most often? So I think this is a super fun activity. Document what you have for one meal and which clade the ingredients are from. Don't forget your spices and your beverages. So if you can, you could do it for like a whole day or a week or something, but you could even just do it for like one meal. So where are the plants, including the spices? And this is a really fun one. So if you have this book, you can look through this one and find it. Otherwise, you can probably just look up each one individually. But I was fascinated when I started studying the Magnoliidae. So here are Magnoliids, nutmeg. So that's a good wintry one. Lang, which you don't really eat, but you can use. Bay laurel, Carolina allspice, avocados. I already had that this morning for breakfast. So it's cool because even though the Magnoliids are super small, like I feel like I actually, nutmeg is super, super common, and I have lang oil in my house. So even though it's small, it's a prominent one in my world. All right. So that's just kind of like to keep up with, and you can do it today, you can do it tomorrow, and you can just keep thinking about it as you go along. Like, hey, what's in this beverage? Like, where are these plants coming from? Or maybe they're not even angiosperms. Maybe they are from a different plant division. All right, that's it. So please enjoy those activities. And if you come up with more, feel free to do some other ones that you come up with on your own. I hope that you enjoyed the lesson today and that you understand a little bit more how the clades work, and join us for those other 3 lessons so you can learn a little bit more. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time. Bye.